Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Thatcher and Darren Doctorman, the Weirded Beardos. Can you believe episode 6? 'Cause I can't. And unfortunately, Kirk's microphone is not working, so we won't be
No,
hearing
it's working. I was
Oh,
just being
oh!
silent. I was letting you talk. I was sharing the stage, Darren.
Share the love.
I was upstaging you physically, but not audibly. I was going to say orally, but that sounds
Well,
worse.
yeah, let's leave it at that.
Let's leave it at audibly.
Here we are again with a podcast that is, as I just found out, only 95% AI free.
Yeah, for all you AI haters.
Because we now have subtitles, and that's all AI. So whatever you read
Well,
there, they made up.
as someone who's partially AI, I'm artificial, but I'm not intelligent. So I work in showbiz. So I guess you could say phony intelligence, which would be more showbizy.
PI.
It's PI.
Yeah.
Phony intelligence.
Magnum PI.
Well, I mean,
have
if you
the
go
shirt.
by the that's right. I'm celebrating my tiki room that I'm not in. I'm in my other non-tiki room with my buddy Wilbur here.
What a lovely.
Who I think we talked about last week.
We did. We heard tell of him,
Wilbur,
but then no one got to see
buddy.
him until now.
He sits in judgment of us all. He will be hanging on the wall at some point, but that's a whole climb up in the attic and reinforce girders kind of thing. Because he's a big boy. Speaking as a big boy myself,
you need to bust out the erector set, so to speak.
Darren, this is a family show. Is this a family show?
No, it's not. Not according to YouTube.
Neither of us have wives or children, so yeah, it's probably not a family show.
No, it's not.
By choice.
The question when I upload every episode is, does this podcast have children in it? And I have to think for a second.
We act like children.
Yeah. Will they call us on it? We'll see.
We're becoming a drive time radio show, at least in LA. Good morning, Los Angeles. You're on with Kirk and Doc.
You're on the morning zoo.
Captain Kirk and Mr. Doc.
Oh my God.
Looks like another scorcher here in the Southland. We've got the Santa Ana's coming in about 70 miles an hour, so keep your hats tied on, folks, because it's windy out there.
And hey, stay off that 405, will you? No, but looking at things you won't.
I assume everybody now has a drive time morning show.
Does anyone still listen to the radio?
In LA, you're stuck. Well, yeah, I mean, you're stuck on the freeway, or if you are, I used to just because Kevin and Bean was a big favorite on K-Rock. I was a K-Rock listener since like 77, 78. So
why does that?
I went through all their morning drive times with Richard Blade, Rodney on the Rock, all their bizarre DJs, and then I ended up with Kevin and Bean, who were like kind of Mark and Brian, slightly less. They're the Blue States Mark and Brian. Not that Mark and Brian were particularly political, as were Kevin and Bean, but I guess I would say, I don't know. I listened to Mark and Brian a little bit. They were fun. Two white dudes, kind of, probably 8-10 years older than we are.
So we're Mark and Brian, the next generation.
Da, 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 da. No, I like Kirk and Doc. Captain Kirk and Mr. Doc.
I'm a captain too. Yo soy Capitan.
I'm going TOS, man. Oh, not that we're nerds or anything. All right. No. Well, today, as we discussed about 30 seconds before
there shall be no topic. We are free.
Are we not men? There's a cut.
There's
a deep cut.
We as Devo.
Are we not men? Well, they stole it from... Island of Lost Souls, or I wonder if it's in the book, in the Wells book.
I don't know.
Are we not men? I think it is. I think that's like a direct quote from the book.
What we know as Dr. Moreau.
Yeah, Dr. Moreau, Island of Lost Souls. That was the title of the book, right?
I think so. I've never read it.
I read it because the source material for the movie, and yeah, it's interesting. I've always wanted to do a campy musical of it, like Cats, like a parody of Cats, because you have all the manimals, the human people, the
The
animal
human people?
anthropomorphized, the human people, the animal people, the manimals, the anthropomorphized, the genetically altered animals that were human-like. I thought, oh, it'd be so funny to have each one of them like cats. They have their song about the bear man and the lion man and the puma woman who's very sexy and has an encounter with our hero who's
Now,
ruined on the
you
island.
know there is a butthole version of Cats, the movie.
Wait, okay, tell me more. Is it known as butthole cats?
That
Ass cats?
it's the music union, ASCAT.
Ass cat. There you go. Nice.
No, but the visual
Not
effects
BUMI.
the visual effects company had to add the cat holes to all the cats in the Cats movie. And there is
What?
a I'm serious.
What?
Because they weren't on the costumes and they weren't in the
And
CG
someone said,
CG
you
version.
know what this
You
movie
know what this
needs?
movie needs? It needs more
More
cat
asshole.
butt.
Oh my god. I want that. I want to be that guy, that poor guy in India,
Yeah,
or wherever they got the discount effects house to just track buttholes on cat costumes. Well, they were semi-digital. Were they just wearing mocap suits, or were they wearing
yeah.
like
They were wearing mocap suits. Um,
no makeup at all?
I don't think so. No, no,
Wow. Okay.
no
So then
makeup.
someone said, "You guys didn't track the buttholes."
Yeah, right.
Oh my god. Ah,
Cat
show business.
Cat Fancy magazine reminded them.
Right. Excuse me, I'm having a reality problem with your singing cats movie.
There's
I went and saw
practically no cat buttholes featured
it.
in
It's
the
very,
uh,
very unrealistic.
in the film.
That's why practical effects always went out. Oh
Oh,
my god. Well, there you go, folks. Our first topic, cat buttholes, the lack of cat buttholes in cats and how it was remediated by
yeah.
a poor bastards in somewhere.
It's just so wonderful that our business can be so detailed.
Well, I'm sure it was like some agent or some agent's wife was like, doesn't seem real. That's my favorite. I mean, there's that whole book of TV executive notes. I think they're mainly TV executive notes
Hmm.
called A Martian Wouldn't Say That. And it
Right,
was a direct quote from a script from My Favorite Martian.
right.
And I mean, oh my God, with the Muppets. Internally, too. This wasn't even with external producers, but we'd get in arguments about, I always go, so you're having a reality problem, even though it's a talking pig who wants to marry a frog. But your reality problem is she wouldn't say that or she wouldn't do that. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
what is it? The Bible?
What's the
What is
problem?
straining at gnats and swallowing camels?
What? I don't see what the problem is. You difficult artist, you.
That's right. I get shirty. I
You're
get
just
very defensive
you're
about
just
how stupid
difficult.
your notes
Stop it.
are. Oh, so one thing I wanted to talk about was my feelings. Um,
Today we're
well, no,
talking
it's
about
because we
feelings,
touched on it before. We touched a little bit on dating and kind of surviving the business, and
right?
I think that kind of made me think about mental health and physical health and dating, which to me is part of at least physical. Well, it's physical and
Yeah.
mental.
Well, they're related because without one, you don't have the other, and vice versa.
That's very true. Um, I think when I was working on sets where you're up and around and up in the morning, it's much easier to stay at least fit because
Oh yeah, you're
you're exhausted in
nonstop.
your body. Even directing, I tend to not be a director who sits in his chair. I mean, it depends. Usually, I'm up and around, and I've seen that's the other thing I want to talk about directing styles that you've witnessed.
Are you a wavy
Um,
arms kind of guy?
oh, I can't. I'm like it's the Italian in me. I'm always like, and I'm up and walking around, and then kind of when we're rolling, I tend to sit back and watch at the monitors, which I was chastised for by Miss Whoopi Goldberg in my first movie
Uh huh.
where we'd shot for maybe an hour or two, and she goes, "Kirk, can I talk to you?" And she was lovely. It was never difficult. And I'm like, "Yeah, what is it?" She goes, "I don't like it that you're sitting all the way over there. I want you to stand by the camera."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh no," and not. I hope she didn't think I was being condescending. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm watching the monitor over it." She goes, "No, I understand, but all the good directors stand by the camera so they can see and feel it." And I'm like, "I'm not that good."
Like Kubrick.
Well, and I said, "I'm not that good." And she said, "Well, and then she was great because she came right back, working with great comedian improv. She goes, "Well, that's how you get that good." And I said, "Okay." So they gave me a little monitor about the size of an iPad, and I
Like a
stood
big bird
right up,
monitor.
sort of, and I stood right by camera, and I realized after about two takes, she would shoot looks to see how I was reacting
Yes.
because she would improv, and so I realized I have to be in her eye line.
Yes.
Normally, you never. I mean, there's the whole tirade that what's his name went off on being in his eye line.
Right.
That
Chris
the audio clip. Chris Bale, Christian
Christian
Bale,
Bale, yeah.
Chris Bale to his friends.
Right.
That's
Oh,
on
good
Chris.
for you.
Yeah. I mean, and I get it. Like when you're talking to someone, the director's standing there, but that's where
Right.
she wanted me.
She
Well, she
needed you
wanted me here
there. She needed you there for direct
to
reactions.
feel the energy, and also then when she clocked me or I checked me, then I wasn't where I wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like talking
You
here and
weren't
going,
distracted by something else.
yeah, and it's because she would improv, and so I think she's the only actor that ever requested that I be there. But again, I was up and around. We were on locations, but now, uh, particularly shooting the last Muppet movie, which was on a volume, if you will, a big LED screen.
Mm-hmm.
I was basically in the same spot for 85% of the shoot, so it was more sedentary. And now I'm directing on Zoom an
By remote
animated series.
control.
So yeah, it's weird because it's when you do get into something, now I'm getting, instead of getting up and pointing, and now I'm just kind of, I've got a Wacom tablet and I'm drawing on the screen, like,
Mm-hmm.
go this way, lots of arrows. It's like being telestrator on a football team. Um, but I've seen, and then the directing styles I've witnessed, Tim Burton was very much sitting in the chair, and his first AD. I want to talk a little bit about first ADs too,
Yeah.
because they really, on most sets, depending on the director, but the ones I've seen, the first AD runs the set. That they always think the director's like, "All right, everybody." It's usually the first
It's the
AD,
first
first
AD.
assistant director. It's the workhorse job, man. They are. That's one thing people don't know unless you're in the business, is that the first AD pretty much runs the set and runs the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure all the this, and gets the sides out and the call sheets out. I mean, it's a lot of work. Whereas the director, in a very spoiled kind of way, you just show up and you talk with your actors and your DP, and you watch them all do it. I mean, and again, that's the job. You're kind of the if you're the brain, the AD is the central nervous system where it
Right.
just gets it all done. And they very often run the tone of the set, not the director.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, when I
Again,
saw Tim Burton,
depending on who the director is, obviously.
well, exactly. Like I'm very, in fact, I've had first ADs that were so quiet that I just ran the set because they
Right.
would be like, I remember one guy called Little Sir Echo, lovely guy, but the way he would do it, I'd say, okay, here's what I'm gonna do, and then he would walk up to each department and say, okay, so we're moving here, and I would be like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I don't like to yell. I said, well, we don't have the time to not yell. So I'd say, okay, everybody, we're moving over here. We're shooting a wide shot, and I got a second camera on the, and just so everyone knows at the same time, there's no game of telephone.
Yeah.
And, I'm not a screamer in that it's angry. I'm just communicating. And I've used the bullhorn before, which typically after about a day, they're like, please take the
Yeah.
bullhorn. Because I do stand up. Yeah, I'm just bored. And hey, how about the, but then, yeah, watching Tim Burton work, he was in his chair, kind of quiet, and the AD would come up with him, talk like this, and then he would go, "Okay, everybody, here's what we're doing."
Yeah.
I've heard from friends who worked on Coen Brothers. Did you ever work on a Coen Brothers?
No, never have.
He said the two brothers just kind of talk quietly, like if you're more than 5 feet away, you have no idea, and
Right.
then the AD will go. But they said a friend was watching them make Hudsucker Proxy,
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite movies. If you guys, if you people listening have never seen it, it's amazing. It's their kind of Citizen Kane in some ways, in the way it's shot. And
It's like
style.
our podcast, for kids.
For for kids. If you've seen the movie, you'll get that reference. But great performances. But my friend said it was like being in a library. Just everyone's
Mm,
quiet, and everyone's working. And I was like, wow, that's yeah. I mean, that's also money and time,
right,
which I
right.
usually don't have. You know, your schedule is stuffed, and you're like, okay, here's. I just find that standing and kind of shouting to everybody, "Here's what we're doing,"
Yeah,
not
you got to
entertaining.
make your day. There's no time to, uh,
Yeah, yeah,
go inwards on your feelings.
right. Well, that's the other thing. Some directors are very, and I've heard this. Have ever witnessed it. I've never witnessed it on set with the people I've worked with. Joe Dante was always very affable and fun. I mean, if he'd get frustrated, he wouldn't take it out on the crew
Right.
or on a crew member. But I have heard of, I mean, the Jim Camerons, the people like that who kind of yell and scream and
Hmm.
uh, are let it be known that they're unhappy. But I personally feel you don't get a better uh, work out of your crew if they're terrified of you. But more of military style, I guess, than mine's more
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm from Jim Henson and Leonard Nimoy, like artists who are doing it. It's more like, hey, everybody, let's do this, and
Right.
not. It was probably more jovial than Leonard. He was pretty serious and thoughtful, not serious.
It's
But
funny.
yeah, what's weird is I have good dear friends that I hear are like really angry on set, like
Right.
what the like come in and dress people down.
Yeah.
The one time I heard about a friend was that he dressed someone down, but they were abusing an animal. They were abusing a dog. So I'm like, well,
Oh,
that
well,
is completely warranted. I mean,
was that not part of the job?
and it was like a prop guy, or I don't even know if it was an animal handler or something. But I mean, that makes sense if someone's being a jerk on set.
Yeah.
I was told early on in my career that what you need to do, I think I mentioned this in an earlier podcast or maybe a different one, but you need to fire somebody, the weakest link,
That's what you.
whoever it
Yeah,
is.
that's
Did
what
we
you
talk
said.
about this?
Yeah.
And just to put the fear of God in the crew, like, oh, you better do your job. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that guy. And because I said, well, what if everyone's doing their job? Well, just find someone that you don't like. That.
Well, there's a famous story. I don't know how apocryphal it is, of Francis Coppola on the first Godfather.
Oh, apocryphal now.
That's right. Uh, that's a good one.
Wilbur loved that joke, by the
Well, Wilbur's an easy room, as they say.
way. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, Kubrick. Yeah.
no, not Kubrick. Coppola.
Coppola, Coppola.
Coppola. Um, and he was on the first movie. He was in danger every week of being fired at any moment. Because there were factions on his crew that were against him.
Right.
The producer wasn't shall we say experienced, and everyone was gunning for Coppola. So at some point early in the production, he fired three people. He fired his first AD. He fired his uh, I think one of the editors, and he basically did that to keep them from firing him. He fired him on a Wednesday so that they wouldn't be able to fire him this next weekend. Um, and it's crazy because it's sort of these inner political machinations that you have
Yeah.
to think about. I don't know if it's that way anymore, but certainly in those early days of the Wild West of the '70s, that was something that you had to consider because of the. It's a very sort of closed system, and there's a lot of people who want the gig that you have, you know?
Well, and especially when you're new. I mean, David Fincher was telling me stories from Aliens 3,
Yeah,
where he got this ridiculous script. I mean, the original script, it was a wooden asteroid run by
yeah,
monks.
yeah. The one
Yeah,
that
with cow.
Vincent Ward was going to do.
I guess, yeah. I don't remember that detail, but I'm sure that's true. I would doubt and don't doubt the veracity of your filmic knowledge.
Yeah, Vincent Ward,
But I
who
remember
who
that, yeah.
who later did
Who's this kid?
What Dreams May Come, was going to
Right,
do Alien 3.
right. And I guess the producers were on him the entire time. Like half the crew was like, and David was like 25.
Yeah,
And they're like, who's this jerk? I mean, he'd done some rock videos and that were successful, maybe 26. and just grueling, and the same thing, kind of looking over his shoulder, like, are they going to? And he thought, I mean, he told me afterwards, he thought they were going to fire him.
Yeah.
Just and it was a real grind, because also he's fighting with the producers with the script because
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. It's kind of it's an interesting film. I mean, talk about Ridley Scott, James Cameron, and then you, and you're 26 and it's
Yeah.
your first feature film. I mean, the fact that he didn't just implode or run away screaming is a
Here, why don't you
testament
do
to,
this crappy script?
yeah, yeah, and he's the new guy, so he can't really
Yeah.
do what he
He has
does
no
now. Say
power, which
no.
is why he was there.
Yeah, right, right. Which is interesting. I mean, they know, oh, he's a visual guy.
Hmm.
He gets the camera. He comes from effects. So yeah, he's great. We can push him around.
Yeah.
Well, now it's interesting. Like, I mean, the complete opposite. I was just reading an article about him in Mindhunter,
Right.
and they wanted to do a season 3. He's like, no, I don't want. Because they said, well, can you do it for less? And can you make it more pop culture-y so it's not so intellectual? And he's like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Nah.
I'm like, damn, I wish I had that. I wish
Right.
people were coming to me with, like, we want to do another Muppet Haunted Mansion movie, or the Muppets Go to Hell or something. I'm like, yeah, no. What's the budget? Yeah, no, I've done that. I don't want to do that again. Um,
Well, someday.
so
Someday. The great thing is you can say no to all these things that come to you in your imagination.
thanks, Darren.
No, that's good. It'll be good. Because then you won't hurt your career.
Well, as it is, falling back on animation. I mean, I love anime. I mean, I'm a big fan of animation, and the show. Again, I've said this multiple times. Nickelodeon treats me way better than I was treated by the fine folk at the Mouse organization.
Right.
As a creative person, I don't mean like people were yelling and slapping me, but I also Disney's business affairs are brutal. I
Yeah.
mean, they're just, sorry, take it or leave it. I think I said they changed. They sent me a new contract about every 2 months while I'm doing it, saying, "Oh, you got to sign it." I'm like, I thought I signed it. You wouldn't even pay me my first payment until I signed it. Yeah, well, we need you to sign again. I'm like, okay, and just to get paid, which I can't believe is legal. But you want to hire a lawyer for half the
Yeah.
money they pay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's well, it's funny that when Disney bought Marvel, uh, they were the only company who they said, "Wow, these guys are cheap."
Yeah. Well, Kevin Feige, who I've become friendly with, or I would say we're friends, is an amazing. I mean, he's the perfect guy for that job. He grew up loving the genre.
Yeah.
He knows the Marvel stuff. He's not. So many executives come in and they're like, Harvard MBA, or there's some guy who maybe had an English major, but they're usually lawyers or business people. But to get a creative who's not, who doesn't fancy himself a writer director, but a
Well,
creative producer is who's that good is tough.
absolutely. Well, and the great thing about Kevin is that even though he wasn't completely familiar with all the comics, he dove in and he learned it.
Right.
He
Well, he's a huge Star Trek fan, which not a lot of people know.
That's
He's a
absolutely
bigger
true.
Star Trek fan, at least growing up, than he was a Marvel fan. At
Yeah.
least that's what he told me. Like, he loves the Trek series. I mean, I think he would love to, produce a Trek thing or something. But
Obviously, I would be all for that.
well, he gets it. Yeah, it's interesting. I just became friends with Todd Stashwick, who
Yeah.
played Shaw.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh my God! I mean, the fan response to your character, and they're bringing back." He goes, "I don't know if they're doing it. Sounds like." And Terry Matalas is another friend. He said,
Hmm.
"There's right now they're not doing any new Trek.
Yeah.
They're kind of paring it down. They're letting the shows end and not necessarily, which is kind of sad. I mean, I
Well,
don't know.
I mean,
Maybe
we
they
have
just
to
focus
realize
on
that the studio itself is months away from being purchased by someone.
But
You
you'd
know,
think that between well, Indiana Jones, is that still a Paramount co-owned
no,
property? Or
no,
yeah, I figured Disney bought that. I guess they just had the distribution, because that was a big deal when we were there doing Trek Four.
sure,
Apparently, Indiana Jones was a huge. In fact, it's one of the reasons ILM was given the Star Trek Four effects, is because they didn't want to piss off ILM, because they were going to do
right.
the next Temple of Doom.
Now, I
Um,
told you back in what that was 86, right? Yes. Um, when they
yeah,
were when you guys were doing post production on Star Trek 4, the editing rooms were one of the first places I visited, going along with my friend who was doing the ILM runs in LA.
Oh, wow.
I went along with him in the Vader van uh, uh, on his
That's awesome.
route, and we visited Trek 4. We visited, did we visit the Indy? Probably not yet. No. No,
Did they were
that
the
was
editing?
later. That was later. Um,
But did they shoot Temple of Doom
I
on the
th-
Paramount lot?
Not Temple of Doom. No, that was 83. That was shot in 82. Temple of Doom. Last
Was it
Crusade.
really?
Last
Oh, okay.
Crusade
Not Crusade.
was 88. Yeah,
Okay, so with the Star Trek 4, yeah, it wouldn't have been there
but
yet.
no, Star
Star
Trek.
Trek
Yeah,
4.
Star Trek 4 was 86,
Mhm.
and released in 87, right? Or no,
I know
released
the
in
timeline.
November of 86.
Yes, it was end of 86 because we
Yeah, yeah,
started shooting. Uh, did we shoot in 86? And I was 1 year from shooting to delivery, or was it like it?
it's
Oh,
hard to remember.
I know I started on it in 85 at some point.
Yeah,
It might have been late 85. We were, mid or fall 85. I think we shot. I know we shot like spring of 86. So
right.
yeah, that would make sense. And
Yeah, that
it
sounds
was
about right.
we
Because
actually
I got into
our
town
premiere was about the same time that the Next Generation launched.
when it was announced. Because Next Generation came out in 87.
Right, but we went to the launch party, not the premiere, the
Right,
launch at Paramount that they had launched it, and I met some of the unknowns who were the
right.
cast
That
members
they
there.
had started production on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was announced, and they were on the lot.
Yep.
Um, we had a great editor, Peter. I'm forgetting his last name on Trek. So did you
Sujitsky?
meet? No, no, no. It wasn't that exotic of a last name. I could Google it, but
Well, not when I can
I'm
Google it.
lazy.
I could Google it. I
Okay, I could
could.
just say, okay,
Oh, no, I
Google,
can't.
watch this. Okay, Google, who is the editor on Star Trek 4?
Uh huh.
Here is information from Wikipedia.
Peter Berger. Pete
Peter
Berger.
Berger,
Yeah. There was some AI right there. So we're 94% AI.
94%. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I mean, I love that we say, okay, here's what we're talking about, and then
Yeah.
we never end up talking about it.
No, that's
But I
part
mean,
of the draw of
it's
this.
the fun of the show. Yeah, you guys are along for the ride just as we are. This is not a highly curated experience. Um, AI, there's a lot of haters, and I get it. If it's combing the internet for people's work and then using it, but a part
Yeah.
of me goes, as an artist, I mean, Sid Mead, Frank Frazetta, all these artists, I bought their books and I absorbed it, and that what spits out is my. AI is doing exactly what artists do. No artist grows up in a vacuum. Visual artists, I mean, maybe I don't know. Beethoven
Yeah,
was
but
deaf.
we can't just Xerox some Sid Mead pages, cut them and paste them,
No,
and pass it off as our own. That's the
no, but
difference.
I know.
AI does that.
Yes, but but and again, I'm not defending it. I'm just saying how far off is it from, I mean, guys I know who really are in the Star Wars, Star Trek universe who, were copying Sid Mead
You
and
know what
Ron
the
Cobb.
difference is? Because no one pays AI for it.
Nobody pays Ron Cobb when you copy his style.
Well,
That's what I'm saying. Artists copy. I mean, what is it? Picasso? It's
yes, but
attributed to him.
it's not copying a style. It's copying images. It's not doing a
No,
style. It is
but
taking images and doing a paste up. It's a it's
not
a it's a
necessarily. I
it's a
mean,
very elaborate paste up, and it's
it's
invisible.
I would say it's more of a
It's
kludge
not
is the.
interpreting. It's not interpreting.
But it is. If you say I want a Rob Cobb desired baby carriage, it can't go take a Ron Cobb baby carriage and just paste it up. It's going to say what that look is and go, all right, here's what a baby carriage looks like. Here's how Ron Cobb draws things. It's a mashup. This is the word I was looking for. I think.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting test to give it,
Yeah, yeah.
because
I'm curious.
9 times out of 10 it is grabbing that artist's work and taking recognizable shapes and images from that and cobbling them together.
Well, you know what? We should have an AI programmer and ask because I
That'd
am
be
curious
interesting. I
because
Yeah, me
I
too.
thought it was more that my interpretation is that it takes it like I would if I go, all right, I'm on a sci-fi series and they want a baby carriage that floats, and everyone says, oh, Ron Cobb, we love that look. All right, Ron Cobb's dead. I have his books. I'm going to pour through it and kind of, use his illustration style and his blockier shapes. He has a distinct style,
Hmm.
like compared to like Sid Mead or anyone else. And then what I've done is Ron Cobbified. I mean, you see it all the time, particularly in the 70s and 80s. Frank Frazetta copyists.
Right.
Ken Kelly comes to
Yeah.
mind, and other guys that
Boris
even
Vallejo. Yeah.
Vallejo. Boris Vallejo, kind of copied the subject matter and the poses, but his style is much more over rendered. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I just
Yeah,
mean
it's
Frazetta
tighter.
was
It's tighter.
much tighter. But that's what I loved about Frazetta. I mean, so much of it was like, Dean Cornwall was like more of the what was indicated. That was a
Right.
word I learned at ILM,
Right.
indication. Like, and that's why Frazetta was great. You're filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
Except for boobs and butts. He gave a lot of information, but faces. Like I remember Frazetta paintings, I would pour over them. Like, beautiful woman's nose was just like a shadow,
Yeah.
just a little, boop, and their eyes were just that kind of cat's eye
Right.
with very little, rendering around it.
Well,
But
draw what you know.
probably, it's about focusing the eye.
Right.
And knowing his audience, he knew where to focus the eye. But the thing is, all those guys, nobody went. I mean, you could say that guy copies Frazetta, or that guy obviously was influenced by
Right.
Frazetta if you wanted to be polite. But nobody's like raising a stink about it. Now, I get it because I think part of it is the efficacy that AI does it. It combs the internet for every Ron Cobb
Yeah.
illustration, but you can't be mad about it because that's what computers do well, just like they do math better than us.
Right. But
I mean, you
when
can be mad about it. I'm sorry, you can be mad about it.
but when it isn't doing art, it is doing collating.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Well, and a human has to curate. It's still you can't just go, "Hey, make spaceships." I mean, you
Yeah.
can. I've
But
seen the
that
text
that
prompt.
is what people are doing.
Yes, but they usually the crap comes out unless it's curated by someone with an artistic sense. They might not be
But that's the
a
thing.
good.
Those people with the artistic sense are being cut out of the equation. That's what's
No,
happening.
no, I don't. I don't agree 100%. I say artists. If you're a guy who went to art center and you're amazing at previs art, uh, and whatever style you've developed your own style, yes, I would be angry and scared because you're that. If that's your trick, AI. It's like if you're a really good guy who did math in your head and calculators came along, you're like, go.
Yeah.
And lawyers. I mean, AI I think is going to affect the jobs. It's not going to affect as car repairmen and plumbers because that's and plasterers and house painters. But lawyers, because so many of my dad was a lawyer, and paralegals and people who
Hmm.
know all the books to go get and research.
Right.
AI can do that in seconds as opposed to hours. I mean, one dear friend of mine, their son is a lawyer, and he works for like Amazon or Google or one of those big, and but the first 4 years out of law school, he was just buried deep in the libraries looking up, doing research to prove cases. And now AI is going
But
to
the difference is lawyers
leave.
will not use AI because no one wants to take billable hours and turn them into billable seconds.
Well, but tell that to the people who tell that to the accountants who got work pulled. Now, is it as good? I can't speak to that. But when what is it? The tax software. They're like, I don't need to go to HR Block. I can
Right.
just type in like and it does the stuff that an accountant or tax accountant would do.
Yeah.
I don't think lawyers at the top of the food chain. It's sort of like auto body workers, like the guys designing and finishing and all that. But if you're a guy who went, putting wheels on or
How was that
riveting,
again?
that's being taken away. So I think it's and that's so it's a glass half full, half empty. Like some people are like, yes, all that terrible grunt work that humans, is repetitive and boring and not interesting is going to be taken away. And then the people who do it, whatever it is, whether it's paralegals and again, I'm very broad strokes here. I know enough to be dangerous, uh, but are and again, the glass half full is like, oh, I didn't want to have to do that anymore. And like people are like, well, that was my freaking job, man. That's what I did.
Well,
It's
that's the
starting to
thing.
sound like Shaggy, man.
Look, we've always had the problem of the gap between the people with the money and the artists, right?
Right.
They've
Well, yeah.
always been maintained separately, and artists have always been regarded as people who don't have real jobs. They just play and paint and draw.
Right. We have fun and laugh
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
and it's all fun, and we can replace them easily. We'll
Oh,
just
yeah.
get some other
I
monkeys
mean,
in here to do this job, because it doesn't
yeah.
matter. And to the people
Yeah.
who don't know the difference, it doesn't matter. That's the sad part.
Well, but that you can't be mad at AI for that. You
Well,
can't
I'm
be
not
mad at
mad at AI.
right. Well, a lot of
I'm mad
people.
at the people who use AI rather than pay artists.
Well, but weren't you mad at them before? I mean, they're tasteless, producers, executives,
Yeah, I
whatever.
was
And
mad at
you're
them before, and I'm still
right.
mad
So
at
it
them
hasn't.
for different reasons.
So that's what I mean. It hasn't. I guess that's going into the macrocosm. It hasn't changed the landscape much. It's like people without taste who feel that artists are replaceable are now they have another thing in their tool belt to go. Oh, I don't need. But if you're a background artist for an animated series, I'd be nervous. I mean, but it
If you're
happened. It
the
happened
kind of
with cell
artist, you
painters.
should be nervous.
But it happened with cell painters. That was a job for mainly for women up until the 70s, and
Yeah,
then well, probably the 80s, and then now it's all done by a
well,
computer by like three people could do the job that 30 did.
but that's obviously that's what always happens in various
Right, right. So are we just
places. But
stonemason?
the difference is you can't retrain yourself to be an AI.
No, I'm well aware of
That's
that.
the difference. You can retrain
Well,
yourself to
well,
do that ink and paint work on a computer, but you can't replace what has replaced you. That's the difference.
no, and that I understand, and I understand why people are angry and frightened or
Yeah.
scared. Um, but still, at the end of the day, I don't hate the idea of AI. I have a dear friend who gets really angry when I talk about AI. She's a visual artist and she went through school and
Hmm.
studied to be character designer. And I get it. I understand why she's frustrated, but she's also frustrated because people less talented than her get jobs all the time, and
All
that
the
comes down
time.
to personality and who and all that. So it's another thing to be angry about if it's ruining your career or stop cock blocking your
Well,
career.
it's one more reason to hate.
What I think AI is going to do is invigorate the concept of an auteur. You can make your own film now with a green screen, a camera, and AI, or not even use cameras. You can generate it. And again, they're not going to be great in the beginning, and they're going to be very obviously, uh, AI aided, if not driven entirely. But as a creator who would love to sit in a room and just do my characters and have them rendered out better than I could do it, that's happening, and to me, it's exciting. And again, the industry, I haven't left the industry. The industry's been leaving me for a while.
Right.
So in some ways, I feel, well, at least I can make stuff. I'm not, I mean, the hardest thing about what we do is, we have an idea or a drawing or a script, and you need 20 to 40 people to make it a thing.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the thing. We've never had the lack of ability or drive to make stuff. We always have that capability. The capability that's being taken away is being able to make money off this stuff that we make.
Well, or is it been? I mean, I mean, this is another thing I want to talk about. Not today. We're going to talk. Originally, we were like, we're going to talk about mental health and dating, and we haven't touched on either. So at some point on this podcast, we'll talk about mental health and dating and weird sex positions that Darren really likes. Oh, have I said too much?
Not
That was to get them to
totally
keep
not
listening.
enough, apparently.
That's how they'll tune in next week. Maybe they'll talk about that. We'll just keep anyway. But I
My
digest.
wildest position is active.
Currently seeking work. Yeah, well, that applies to my dating life too. That's right, ladies. We're single, and we're not a couple. I know.
Speak for
I
yourself.
know. We'd be a. Wait, you're a couple?
Yes.
Is that a fact? Don't you just self own your?
I identify as
Um,
a couple.
well, I used to say, you're only, the crazy stuff I'd say. They go, well, you're just listening to the banquet that's going on in my head. So I identify as a group of drunken sailors on a ship that doesn't know where it's going, and I
Well,
just so,
they are making their outward appearance known.
did you hear that, Wilbur? Uh, what the hell were we talking about?
No, we were talking about AI and how it's
Yeah, I was.
influencing our health and welfare, and how that influences our
Well, it's
lives.
certainly, yeah, a lot of people are depressed and angry about it. I still think, as a creator, as somebody who wants to do my own stuff, uh, even down to 3D printing now,
Hmm.
you can get, I mean, it's crazy. I watch AI YouTube videos of AI kind of journalists, I guess. They're guys who dabble in it, but then basically go, here's this crazy new thing. And it's an onslaught. It's a tsunami of programs
Yeah,
that are either free or pretty reasonable coming out weekly that are,
that all
AI
basically do the
generated
same
videos.
thing, but have
No, there's a wide
slightly different ways of working with them.
Yeah, but there's a range of outputs. I mean, from voice and video, there's now AI where you can film yourself. You or I could just film ourselves for 3 minutes talking to just, either reading a script or just,
Hmm.
and then it will create a virtual version of you that you just type in what you want.
Right.
And I mean, we should try that. We should try doing a AI generated versions of us and do the show. We'll just do the audio and let it and see, or type in. I don't know. It'd be curious. I mean, not this next month, but it would be fun just to see how good or bad it would be. I'm when you see these demos, you're like, holy cow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, at some point you think, well, our newscaster could be just somebody typing in the stuff, and there's a perfectly good looking man,
Well,
woman, child, alien, dog
a
delivering
little
news.
bit of news that came up this past week when I read the stories of Sports Illustrated shutting down. Um,
Really?
yeah. Uh, Apparently, they've been using AI to create reporters and have been putting out stories, and no one has known.
Like ChatGPT
Yeah,
uh, generated stories, but they give them the topic. I'm assuming it's not just like comb the internet for.
I would guess,
Yeah.
uh,
Wow.
but no one knew until they were caught at it.
Well, first of all, print media. The I mean, I'm shocked at the terrible. I was like, boy, these nobody's spell checking even. I
Yeah.
mean, spell checking or even grammatically checking half the news I read or the
Well,
stories I read on the
to
internet.
quote Egon Spengler, print is dead.
It's been dead for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I read every day, but I just read what's on the internet.
Yeah.
And I haven't read a book, a fiction book for fun in probably 7 years. And I was reading young adult stuff to try and turn into, because I'm like, well, they don't want my ideas. Let's
Yeah.
find, that's the new thing. Find a book. I mean, there's a person at the Henson Company whose job is to find these books when they first come out and option them for a song
You
because
can
it's a new
you can
author.
just say it's Scooter. That's fine. You can say who it
It's
is.
Scooter. Hey, Chief, I found a new book. So that was the last time I read it for work, or for at least potential work. But yeah, and I used to be a voracious reader. I mean,
Hmm.
sci-fi, which I'm sure nobody's shocked at, and a little bit of fantasy. But yeah, I mean, we talk about sci-fi authors. I think the most current sci-fi author who's still alive that I read was David Brin and Orson Scott Card,
Hmm.
and they were hitting big in the '80s.
Yeah.
So, which is about the last time I read for fun was up until the early '90s, and partially that's because my work changed. I started writing and being in a more literary world, so
Right.
I also was worried that how much of that. Well, there's another way that AI can take. I mean, there was a contest in the '70s. Mimic Hemingway. That's not the title of it, but it
Right.
was basically
No. Yeah. They
and
would
it
have
was
a yearly
a contest.
write like Ernest Hemingway contest.
And the winner would, and usually they were funny, but they were,
Yeah.
and usually the subject was funny. But there's a style. Stephen King has a style.
Right.
Ray Bradbury definitely had a style. So AI could probably read, all the Ray Bradbury books and go, write me a Ray Bradbury story about a pumpkin that comes alive on Halloween. And
Right.
I'm sure it would do a passable job. It's an experiment I haven't tried yet, where how many readers would go, and you could say, we just found a Ray Bradbury short story, let's say, like a novella, somewhere between that and said, and it's called, Halloween Jack, and it's about a pumpkin that comes alive with the spirit of a boy's dead brother. And it's very kind of warm and fuzzy and Halloween tree kind of story. And I
The
wonder if
first line
people,
of the Ray Bradbury story is, "I wasn't imagining it. The pumpkin was moving."
there you go.
That's it.
See, no, I thought it'd be much more fly. I loved his prose because he would get so poetic.
Hmm.
It was it was a it was a fall evening like no other. The leaves crispy rustling in the he would just
Yeah.
I just love the way he would paint a picture as opposed to like Asimov or Heinlein who would be very kind of dry and more fact based.
My favorite, my favorite Bradbury short story uh, is a really simple one, and I've always wanted to make a short film of it. It's called "The Sound of Summer Running." It's about
Yeah.
it's about a kid who sees this new pair of sneakers in the store window, and he fantasizes how it would be to have these new sneakers at the beginning of summer. And it's poetic and beautiful and lyrical, and it's my favorite short story. And
He,
it
his
has such a it's an has an atmosphere clinging around it.
that's I would say that's what his stuff more than any other at least science fiction fantasy author, he would create a vibe.
Uh huh.
Again, but obviously about summers and falls.
Mm-hmm.
Crisp autumn air and warm summer days and dandelion wine
Yeah.
and
The change in the world and your reaction to it.
and usually from the perspective of a boy, just on the verge of manhood, between 12 and 14.
Right.
uh, like somewhat like Stephen King's The Body, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just about being and and again being a boy when I started reading that stuff, at probably 12 or 13, it like oh wow, but he would paint such it was poetic. I mean, he wrote
Yeah.
very prosy prose,
Poetic prose. Yeah.
poetic prose, yeah. Uh, and it wasn't lurid, but I mean, it was lurid in a very warm, fuzzy way. Even his stories on Mars,
Yeah.
M's for Mars and stuff, just had dark they were and golden eyed. I mean, there's just like a way to describe. Other people like Edgar Rice Burroughs would like they had forearms and golden bronze skin, their
Yeah.
muscles, just
Yeah.
the same thing but completely different approach.
And it's funny
And
that Bradbury's Mars stories are very simple stories,
oh yeah,
except for that one thing. Oh, we're on Mars.
yes. Well, I love the one, I don't remember the name of it, but where they're finding all this old Martian machinery.
Yeah.
And it was an amusement park ride where you're on a train that goes out of control and crashes. And he's talking about how you're feeling the hot metal and bolts like piercing your body. And it's like a VR thing. And you basically get to ride a train into destruction
Right.
where you're mutilated beyond belief, and then it's done. And I'm like, oh yeah, if I mean we're heading towards that, not with the physical reaction, but
Now coming to the Win in Las Vegas.
yeah, that's my train.
Yeah.
But I thought, hey, what an amazing idea. I mean, this was back in the 50s, I
Yeah.
guess. And but to take that sort of idea of what a roller coaster and
Hmm.
go, we'll take it to its logical conclusion. If you want to be scared, how scared are you if you actually die on it?
Right.
But it's a recreation of that or a simulation. I was like, oh, but the way he described it, the bits of glass flying through your face, and it's just like, wow, that's just yeah. He was one of my favorite authors, and what's interesting relating to screenwriting, because he did write scripts.
Yeah. He wrote
I've never read any of
he wrote
his
Moby
script.
Dick.
Yeah, I mean, he adapted it.
Well, the screenplay.
The screenplay, yeah. But he'd written others. Well, he didn't write Fahrenheit 451, did he?
No.
Though Truffaut,
Yeah.
yeah. But again, amazing ideas. But he wrote amazing ideas, but in a less dry kind of Asimov Heinlein sort of way. Uh, but screenplay, it made me think of screenplays because when I started writing screenplays, just my own stuff, I would try to evoke some of that. And basically, I was told, well, there's two schools of thought. When I started writing, my college friends were all selling screenplays, the Shane Black and Fred
Hmm.
Decker, and those guys were the guy who wrote
Mm-hmm.
Craig, the Highlander. So these are guys I went to
Right.
college with, and we're all in our mid 20s, and they're selling major screenplays. And Shane and Fred Decker would write these scripts that were funny. In other words, it was not, there could be fun in what happened in the script, but the read was funny.
Right.
And it was really clever because then readers would enjoy reading it because that's how you got your script sold.
Hmm.
It wasn't just like John entered the room, he scanned it with,
Right.
he looks around and poking out of the door is, a terrifying visage. It would be like,
You had to
and
entertain the levels of readers that you have to go through
exactly.
to
And
get to
the
the
one thing I
decision
remember was
maker.
from the Creeps was, he looked up and uh, uh, an old goat was peering around the corner, eyeing him warily. Oh wait, that wasn't an old goat. It was the house mother of the dorm. And but you're like, oh, I get it. So it would evoke an image, but also make you laugh.
Yeah.
And I tried that, and I was kind of had my hand slapped by a reader, like you're making your script longer, and you're just kind of gilding the lily. Like just let the story be the entertaining part. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously, again, readers. That's the one thing I do hate about the business is development executives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate them en masse, but most of them have no. They give their opinion, and they're not attached to it whether it gets made or not.
Right.
So of course it's easy for them to just go, no, I hate it. I don't like it, and
Because
find all the reasons not to like it.
it's not their job to get things made.
They're not
It's
attached at
their
all to
job to
production.
not
Yeah,
be blamed for getting something made.
exactly. And so they're usually in their 20s, and they just graduated with English majors, or they
Yeah.
want to be screenwriters themselves. So of course they're kind of like, ugh, this has been done before.
Right.
And it's and they're the gatekeepers to get to the gatekeepers,
Yeah.
and that was very frustrating as a writer. Whereas, if you're a name, if you're William Goldman, which is like going to the top of the chart, but even somebody who's sold something,
Even if you're Oscar Goldman.
Felix,
No, that's Oscar Madison.
I know. I was just thinking of famous Oscars, but would have been great if Oscar Madison had played Oscar Goldman.
Steve.
Steve, we can rebuild you.
Oh
There's
my God! You keep that mechanical eye out of my way, and there's gonna be trouble.
That's right. Austin, you're a menace.
Oscar, that was
There you go.
linguini.
There's a mashup. Steve Austin with Oscar Madison.
The $6
The
million odd
bionic
couple.
The what?
The $6 million odd couple.
A couple. There you go. And Steve Austin's just really, really meticular. It's still played by Tony Randall. Tony Randall or Jack Lemmon. Oscar.
Nah, nah, nah.
I was making linguini.
Now it's garbage.
Oh, it's garbage. Yes. Anyway, but we digest. So AI dating.
I don't want to talk about AI anymore.
This is why we're doing this podcast, because this is what we would sit at conventions and just do this for a few
while
hours.
people wouldn't line up.
Yeah, while people were avoiding us like the plague. Are you doing any cons besides? I assume you're doing Wonderfest.
I'm gonna do Wonderfest.
Any other? Are you gonna do Vegas? You do Vegas every year. The Trek Con.
I don't know. It's too far away. It's too far away to know. Because
you mean time wise, not
because
distance
I don't
wise.
get they don't pay me to go to that, so I got to pay for it myself. So if I can, I will, but if I can't, I won't.
They have never invited me, and I don't get it after being on Trek 4 times really.
It's because you don't have an agent handling just that.
Well, and I'm getting one. In fact, I've had a lovely email exchange and a phone call with Aaron Gray.
Aaron Gray, yeah.
Who has a company called Heroes for Hires.
Yep.
Heroes for Hire, and she just booked me for July in Knoxville at Fanboy Expo.
Nice.
In July.
In July.
Nerds go in July. Nerds
we know a
there.
place where nerds flock to. Every July, nerds grow there.
Nerds
really
go
mean
there.
That? Oh yeah,
So
Erin is great. We had her on the Trexperts a couple years ago,
did she
and
ever? Did she
she's
ever? Would she ever guest on any of the treks?
yeah. No, she
Well, I know what she's. I mean, I
no,
know her background, but I didn't know if she ever guest starred or played a.
she never did. She never did. But I think she
Did you
auditioned
have
for
her on
Next
as?
Generation.
Did you have her on as
We had
a
her on as a Trek adjacent guest.
Trek adjacent? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because who wouldn't want to talk to Erin Gray? She's
Oh, she's
amazing.
lovely. I mean,
Yeah,
again, I met her on the phone, and we had a love. I mean, she's incredibly intelligent and incisive, but very friendly. You don't feel
yeah,
like she's business only. Yeah,
yep.
so that was nice. So we just literally today I got the email
That's awesome.
saying that she had because I had an agent who was lovely, but she was very new.
Hmm.
And I would say, hey, find out about this con, and then she'd just say, I emailed him. Like, okay, and did you follow up?
No,
No, I never heard back. Well,
yeah, that's
okay,
kind of
then I could do
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah. And she was a lovely person. I think she was swamped, but she was trying to just get as many guests, and I kept getting
She just wasn't
cons. Just
experienced. Just wasn't experienced.
yeah, well, and I kept getting work and giving her the percentage of it,
Yeah,
and going,
but you were
okay,
doing
at
all the
some point,
work.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty much been my experience with agents my entire
Yeah,
career. I had one agent who I loved. We were still friends, but I got one job. Out
right.
of all the years I've had agents, and I would say I've had agents since, let's say, well, let's be conservative, 30 years,
Wow.
and only one has ever gotten me paid work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So every job I've had it's who you know and relationships, which is again probably true in car sales and computer programming. I just it is a I think agents are great for saying no. When you're Brad Pitt or you're David Fincher,
Right.
and people want to see if you're even available, and the agent can be, well, he doesn't do anything for less than 10 million or whatever it is. They're great because you don't have to deal with it, and you're not answering your phone all the time. When people want you, you need an agent. When
Right.
people don't know who you are,
Yeah.
is when you really need an agent, but they don't want to do the work.
That's correct.
I've found, yeah.
Well, if you're listening to this episode, you've missed our live streaming event with Trek Live Con, and
But
which
can you
which
find it on
happened
our YouTube?
which happened on the 12th. You can take a look in our channel
Of which
and
month,
of
Darren? Which month?
February.
Yeah.
Yes, and you just missed it. It was this past Saturday, and
And will it be on our YouTube
it'll
channel?
be on our YouTube channel that you can check out. Uh, and hopefully, there's a whole bunch of new people who've learned about our podcast who have joined
All
us
three of them.
since then. Yeah.
My cousins don't care about Star Trek, so I don't.
Well,
But again,
that's
write in
great
and ask.
because we don't talk about Star Trek.
No, no, no. We don't talk about Star Trek. Well, we do glancing references,
we
like visiting the editing room. That
we
was this
expect
week's
we
glance.
expect you to know more about Star Trek than we talk about.
Yes, I love Star Wars. I mean, that's an old one. All right. So AI, love it or hate it, it's here.
AI is no good for
You know what's
dating.
bad when I'm the one trying to bring us back on some kind of topic. But AI's here to stay. There's no getting around it, or so I decide. I welcome our robot overlords, and
AI is here
I
to stay until people get bored with it, and then something else will take its place.
no, it's a tool. I mean, it's like
Who
saying
you
the
calling a tool?
Photoshop. It's a tool. It's a freaking tool. It's like saying 3D printers are the new fad. Yeah,
Yeah,
but they ain't going anywhere. They have not lived out their useful cycle, and I think
right.
AI is going to just get more. So you can hate it if you want, but
Well,
sort
the
of like
difference
hating.
is AI doesn't have a $600 barrier to getting started to work with it, whereas 3D printing does.
Yes, but say, it used to be $6,000, then
I
it was
know.
$3,000.
I
Now it's
know.
$500,
Yeah.
and the quality. I've been looking at it. It's one of those things. Like, do I need another hobby? And
For
there'd be
two
reasons for me to
years,
get it.
for 2 years, I've had a printer in boxes waiting for me to open it up. I don't want to get involved with it because it's going to take up too much freaking time, and I'm
Come
just
on,
waiting till I actually have time to do it.
Don't you want to design your own version of a phaser and print it out so you can bring it to conventions and go, look at my phaser?
No.
No.
I would do it
Well,
for
I
myself.
again, I'm a tech head. One of the things I shared with Jim Henson, whoop, did I dropped a name there. Um, the love of technology, and 3D printing wasn't even a, I mean, I don't think it was on the
It
horizon.
wasn't even an idea yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it really wasn't an idea. I mean, it was an idea in sci-fi, but he loved computers and the computer technology, and I think Jim would have had, sort of like Legacy, which was what Stan Winston's
Right.
studio after Stan passed became Legacy. They have a room the size of a supermarket, well, the size of a 7-Eleven, filled with 3D printers from the ones that do, from what is it, resin to
Right.
what do they call it? The thread, not threads,
Yeah.
the spooling, the
Yeah.
filament,
Filament.
filament printers, resin printers, and even I think sintering ones that go up to like you could print parts of cars.
Right.
And a friend of mine who works there has just said most of their stuff now, well, all their costume wardrobe things are 3D printed,
Right.
and half of their they're getting into the 3D printing prosthetics and makeup too.
Hmm.
If it's not, like if it's horns or something.
Right.
So I was looking at the Bamboo X1, I think Ultra or something.
Hmm.
I don't know. I love tech, but I just keep
I do
going.
too. It's just, it's a sinkhole that you can get stuck
Yeah,
in terms of time and money. Absolutely.
well, I used to love making things and actually producing a
Yeah.
thing. And so that's why, and sculpting, molding, casting, all that was fun. I don't really have a space for it anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't have a space for a 3D printer. It's like getting a mini fridge and going, oh, I'll just put it,
Right.
I'll just put it at the dining room table. Also, there's the fumes
That's
and all
also
that
good for
stuff.
dating.
You want to see my 3D, instead of my etchings now, do you want to
That's
see my
right.
3D printing?
I have a lot of 3D printings that you might be interested in.
I've done my own version of R2D2. That is, it's sort of like a version two.
It solves most of the problems that the original one had. Let me
Yeah,
put it that
the
way.
Astromex. These are definitely something that Flavin requires. Uh, but I know those people. But in fact, that's what I used to do. I would design my version of Frankenstein. I would read
Hmm.
Shelley's book and go, okay, and I was fascinated why the flat head,
Hmm.
why Jack Pierce said, oh, you should have a flat head. And it's because I guess he looked at early brain surgery where they
Where they
couldn't
had
really
the
replace the
top cut
skull cap.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, the top cut off. So it should have been like his forehead should have been here, not here.
Right.
But it still just became so iconic. So I would design, my creature of the Black Lagoon, my werewolf, and so that's what I would do now. Is here's my version of something, and I've 3D printed it. And you're like, why? Well, because my dad's best friend built birdhouses. Now I 3D print monster. It's a thing to do.
Because building
I,
things.
and things. Well, and then let's just be grateful we live in a world and that we are in a country and we are in a socioeconomic bracket where we can do that, as opposed to I'm keeping the wolves from eating my child tonight by whatever. That's the other thing. I mean, talk about first world problems. Should I get a 3D printer? Or should I buy a
Let's
new?
let's put it this way, Kirk. The child is our creative future, and the wolves are AI. So that's just bringing it around.
That's a good. That's a good. That's a good book title in there somehow. The AI at the door.
Yeah.
Hello, I am AI. Let me in.
Candygram.
Mrs. Grant.
Uh,
Well, that does it for this week.
yeah, that was a good out. We talked about nothing that we were going to talk about, which is
Well,
why I love doing this with.
we
Why I love
skimmed
doing this with you, buddy.
we skimmed along a couple things that we were gonna talk about, but
We said that we were going to talk about them and that we weren't,
yeah.
but yeah. So stay tuned. At some point, we're going to talk about mental health, dating, sex with yourself or with other people.
I don't think we're gonna do that, but
Not,
yeah. Kirk will talk
but
about a
you know,
lot of
sex
things that
sells,
you may or
Darren.
may not want to hear.
Sex sells, buddy.
Does it?
We got to hint at it. Yeah.
Not for me, it doesn't.
That's-
Oh dear.
Oh my. Oh
All
my.
righty.
Oh my. All
Well,
right.
until next
Well,
time
thank
when
you
we
for
figure out things that we're not going to talk about.
thanks for staying with us and this bizarre dialogue
Yeah.
of two weirded beardos.
Thanks for hanging around. See you next time.